Hello and welcome to another episode of Monster Island Radio. I'm Ben, and as usual, I'm joined by the newly recovered...
Newly recovered from what? Not from having a nice holiday.
No. What was it, Graham?
Having COVID.
Yay! You got the Rona.
All right.
Great.
Yeah, you were bigging up my forthcoming holiday, which I'm sure all the listeners are dying to know more about, but I didn't go on holiday. So I stayed at home with Corona, and I have to go on holiday another time. So
honeymoon cancelled.
I'm feeling well. There's no threat to my existence currently.
That's good. I mean, one plus side, I think it brought the episode a little bit closer to recording.
Probably. You can watch a lot of movies when you're lying in bed.
Exactly.
Doing nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about Godzilla Raids Again.
Hooray.
Which was the sequel to the OG 54 Godzilla. So released in 1955 and directed by Motoyoshi Oda. This is the only that I could see. This is the only Godzilla he ever directed, which was
no comment.
Yeah, well, comments later.
Yeah, lots of comments to come.
Okay, so as usual, we'll do a little summary of this film just to remind everyone. So we start out with pilot Tsuburaya flying his plane over the ocean, scouting for fishing spots, when a woman named Hidemi from the fishing cannery HQ, who is also Tsuyoka's girlfriend, informs him that his fellow pilot Kobayashi made an emergency landing on Owato Island. Tsuburaya rescues him just as we see Godzilla fighting a new kaiju on the island. They then inform Professor Yamane from 1954 and the authorities of what they saw, who then determine they witnessed the new kaiju Anguirus. So Yamane suggests a blackout in Osaka and recommends firing flares out to sea to lure Godzilla away should he resurface in Osaka Bay, which he ends up doing. So they put the plan into action. But trouble is, the flares end up luring in Anguirus as well, and the two clash again, destroying big portions of Osaka, including Osaka Castle and the cannery. Godzilla then kills Anguirus by biting his neck, and then essentially cremates his corpse. So the fishing operations move up to Hokkaido, where the pilots end up helping the Japanese air defense force track Godzilla to Kamiko Island. And in an attempt to stop Godzilla, Kobayashi tries to use his plane to... I'm not really sure what he was trying to do, to be honest, but he ends up trying to stop Godzilla using his plane somehow, but ends up being hit by atomic breath and crashes into the side of a mountain. As a result, Tsuburaya notices that when Kobayashi hit the mountain, it could trigger an avalanche. So he rallies the Japan Air Defense Force to concentrate attacks on the mountain, and then successfully creates a big enough avalanche to bury Godzilla. The end. And that's pretty much as succinct as I could get it.
Well, I would dare say this is the shortest of synopsis we've had.
Yeah, I think I think I wrapped up, was it the first episode we recorded? I kind of did that in a sentence. And then they got like exponentially bigger after that point. But yeah, this is a lot shorter than the others. So I mean, this is the first instance of having a giant monster mash on film, specifically giant monsters. So it kickstarted the standard that we came to expect with subsequent Godzilla films, and it's the first film to feature fan favorite Anguirus. So in many ways, it's quite a landmark film. Yeah, well, not in many ways. In some ways, it is.
Well, I guess if we commented last time that the first movie established a great many things, especially on the human side of the storytelling, and this movie repeats some of those ideas already.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess the thing that this movie adds is the idea that one monster is going to fight another, and I feel like even imagining a world where this film had never been made, if you made one giant monster movie and then you wanted to make a second one, I feel like the natural progression is that you put another monster in there.
Yeah, so, that's a good point, yeah.
And here we are. We've got monsters fighting for all the time now.
Yeah. So what expectations did you have going in? Like, what are you expecting to see? Because, I mean, I knew nothing about this film other than when it was released, and that was it.
Yeah, well, I knew a couple of things, and I think the same as you. I knew that they'd made it basically less than a year after the first movie. So as soon as the first film came out, they just cranked out the sequel pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
And having not seen it, I always had the expectation that it would probably be, you know, they reuse a lot of the same stuff. I presume the same like actors would come back and, you know, the same sets and things, and they just sort of, I just thought it's going to be Godzilla again, but with an extra monster in, and it's kind of not that, but you can see that it's been chucked together very rapidly. Like, they haven't really spent much time on the story. A lot of the film feels like filler. I mean, there's one part when they recount what happened in the first movie purely by watching the Tokyo destruction scenes from the movie Godzilla on a projection screen.
Yeah.
And that just goes on for like a minute, and it's like dead silence.
It's longer.
But it's like they play the video to you, but they don't play the audio. It's weird.
It's I mean, you could explain it away that, you know,
it's silent film, in the context of reality. But as a viewer of a movie, it's like it highlights how kind of like dull it is. So I've always suspected that it would be kind of like this, and like, oh, it's just a cash in basically. And I was kind of sorry to say, like, yeah, it's as cynical as a movie from 1955 gets, really.
I mean, I mean, I was basically expecting a not as good 54. You know, that's all I expected. Because whereas 54 was very serious and deep, I expected this to be like 54 light. You know, and I kind of expected that sort of, you know, what Aliens is to Alien.
Right, like the same thing.
The same thing, but it's like, okay,
different.
Yeah, but different. Yeah, exactly that. So, I mean, I wouldn't compare this to Aliens.
No.
You know what I mean? I expected more destruction and action and stuff like that. So, you know, they had like the jailbreak scene, you had the avalanches, airstrikes, the monsters fighting.
Love triangle.
We'll get onto that.
It's more like I would liken it to slasher movies when you have like Nightmare on Elm Street and then Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and 3 and 4 and like, you know, Freddy or whatever, you know, Nightmare, what's the Friday the 13th? That's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, here's Friday the 13th again, or Halloween 3, 4, 5, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's like that where, you know, you expect to get a sequel that's basically the same but a little bit different, and that's kind of like what it is, you know. Yeah.
Even though that's kind of what I was expecting, it was still a bit flat.
Yeah, know? I mean, I didn't. This is the
thing. Because it didn't scratch that kind of like monster movie itch that I was sort of expecting, actually.
Yeah, I mean, to cut right to the point of my opinion on it, I expected it to be a rehash of the first movie, but not to be a poorly made movie. Which it pretty much is, which is a shame because we've obviously seen the original Godzilla many times and we spoke very highly of it on our recording because we think it's great. It doesn't detract from that experience, but yeah, it's everything you would fear from this kind of thing. Like, oh, you know, Godzilla pretty much immediately becomes like, oh, it's just a thing that we can just sort of McDonald'sify, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's. I mean. So yeah, like as you're saying, like this was released less than a year after, but
yeah,
it was. I'll tell you how much less. So it was ordered a few weeks after 54 was released, and then released 6 months after that point. So that was from, you know, inception to release. It was 6 months, and that was like, and the director Oda, he was expected by Toho to direct 7 movies per year.
Jesus.
So like it really was just a conveyor belt, like, you know, get these out.
Yeah.
And you know, so you know that argument that, you know, it's a cynical cash grab, it's perfectly valid because sadly that's essentially what it is.
It's amazing actually that it made money, because you would think that, I mean, obviously we live in a different era now of media where we consume so much and we see so much, but I would have thought that people's appetite for Godzilla would not have sort of, you know, they wouldn't have one kind of thing. They just saw that and here's another one immediately. You might want to leave it a bit more time. You could even like cash in on just letting the first movie run for longer, wouldn't you?
Yeah, totally agree. Because let's just say Friday the 13th, for example.
Right.
Like, say the first one came out and then 6 months later, a second one came out. I'd be like, oh, you know what? I haven't even seen the first one yet.
I mean, this is basically what happened with the Matrix sequels when they did Reloaded. And then
true.
It was 7 months later because they'd already produced them back to back. I think it was like, maybe even less actually. I think it was something like May to October, I think it was. But it might have been March to October. I can't quite remember. But yeah, they released the same year, those two. Matrix 3 and 2 and 3. And yeah, I mean...
And I think Pirates of the Caribbean did something similar, I think. Yeah.
It's like anything that becomes annual or closer than annual. I mean, people have been saying for a long time there's going to be Marvel fatigue or superhero fatigue, which is an exception to the rule, perhaps. And obviously, we know that like cowboy movies, like westerns and musicals, never suffered from this sort of thing. I feel when it's within the same franchise specifically, yeah, I mean, obviously it did make money because here we are 60 plus years later and we still have Godzilla. So clearly it was a success. I'm just surprised that they were able to churn a sequel out 6 months after the fact and still make cash. But I guess that just speaks to how popular the original movie was.
I think so, yeah. I think it reviewed quite well as well.
Yeah.
At the time, which was strange.
I read that it reviewed better.
Yeah. I just find that so odd.
I think because people supposedly viewed the first movie as too lofty, and this one was less sort of, stuck up, for lack of a better term. It didn't have these sort of grand allegorical ideas. It was purely like monster comes, monster fights, the end, and that's what people kind of wanted from it. So it kind of, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so I felt like it. Well, looking back at it, so it's kind of either put myself back in, that era or looking back at it now. So I think looking back at it now, I mean, I think it suffers from being devoid of any point as it doesn't try to be a better film. It just, again, like we say, it's just like churn it out. In fairness, it does try to be a different style of film, which is, something I can give it credit for. But thinking about audiences back then, if we're going to like dig a little deeper on that side of things, I think that something that struck me about the mood of the film was there's a great sense of optimism throughout it, whereas 54 was like, super heavy, problems at every turn kind of thing.
Yeah.
There was this kind of, I would say, an almost unique to Japan sense of resolve and dealing with rebuilding and things like that. So like an example I can think of is I don't know if you saw that anime. What was it? Japan Sinks 2020.
No.
There's a point in that. So basically, Japan's flooding and people are dying. But there's one moment where, I'll keep it spoiler free, but this set of characters, a family member of theirs dies. And like while the person's laying dead next to them, they're like, we'll get through this. And it's like, it's almost happy sounding. And like, for myself watching that, I'll be like, oh my God, how could you say that? But I find this often with Japanese, cinema and TV and stuff like that. There is this sense of resolve. So like, I think that is the kind of maybe the prevailing message for this film, if there is one, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of, I don't know where I sit with it, because like the weight of any aftermath in the movie, if something bad happens, like when Osaka kind of gets destroyed, that weight's gone because of this sense of optimism, and as a result, there's no sense of dread at any point. Whereas you're like, oh God, when's he going to surface next? What's going to happen? You don't ever feel this kind of threat. So, like, after Osaka basically gets destroyed, they're having like a big old laugh in the rubble about, what's his name, not having a girlfriend and all this kind of stuff. And it's like,
right.
Yeah, it's really, I don't know where it sits with me. It's just kind of odd, I think, is the only way I can describe it. But yeah, maybe this is what audiences needed back then. Like whereas 54 was like, as you were saying on the last episode, this kind of, it was needed, like, to express how they're feeling. Maybe this is the next step in that, like, okay, we know how we feel. How do we move on from this?
Well, I think you can imagine that if the first movie's come out, and yes, it's been a fairly unanimous success financially, but critically it's been told, oh, you're too thoughtful, and we don't want to, dwell on these ideas, which I think is a purely sort of, it's antithetical to the reality of the situation, because, and this is purely my opinion, but I feel it's often the case in cinema and the critiquing of cinema that the critics don't actually know what people want. And I think people do and have responded to Godzilla's intention as a allegorical movie, in the time it was released and the years since.
The 54 one.
Yeah, exactly. The original movie.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether or not it received criticism for that, which, as we've said, like, we know that it did, because then Raids Again comes out and it was praised for being a more simplistic movie. And I think it's easy to then say, oh, well, this movie is a success because it rights the wrongs of the previous Godzilla movie, when it's like, that assumption is based on a misunderstanding of what people liked about the first movie anyway. So yeah, I feel like you could say, oh, the filmmakers were maybe responding to what they'd heard that was negative about the first Godzilla movie, and therefore made it lighter. But I think it's probably more a case that, as we've said, they made this movie in the 6-month turnaround, and they probably just didn't have the time to imbue it with anything deeper than what it is, because we've already pretty much discussed that we don't think it's a great movie or it's well made. But to kind of describe what it's like to watch this film, when you watch 54, there's a lot of kind of thoughtful moments. You see the destruction that Godzilla's committing on like a human level, on a street level. You can see like the victims of what's going on, and you also get the conflict that people want to kill Godzilla and some people don't want to kill him. There's a lot of like thoughtful stuff there with that, and like, oh, you've got the oxygen destroyer as well, so it's a weapon. Like, should we use it? Shouldn't we use it? Is it right to destroy the plans of it? And all this blah blah. Then you watch Godzilla Raids Again, and right from the off, you get these shots of like planes flying over water, and they're like over boats, and they're surveying like fissure, activity and stuff like that. And it's very drawn out and slow, and there's a lot of space where there's nothing really happening, and the movie hasn't really given you anything to chew on mentally either. You're just seeing shots of like planes flying around. Yeah. And there's just shots of boats. And there's a lot of that in the movie, like even after Godzilla and Anguirus have appeared, it'll go long stretches of a relatively short movie. It'll go long stretches of just sort of like just things happening. Like there's a scene, like you said, where they were having they're having drinks sort of, after work one night, and this is like between Godzilla attacks. And there's just a lot of kind of space there. There's just lots of space in the movie where it's basically filler, where they're just sort of, oh, we need some story to take place before the next Godzilla attack, but we aren't filling this time with anything that is metaphorical or philosophical or anything. It's just like, it's purely human interest, and the human interest story that's in this movie isn't actually that bad, but it's so like thin that it'd be hard to praise it either. Like there's a very, very simplistic like love triangle, which is basically most of the story. Like you've done your synopsis obviously, and going through like, oh, Godzilla appears, Godzilla gets drawn to Osaka, and I really like that, this idea like, oh, we've sent off the flares and it's distracted Godzilla, but then you get Anguirus coming the opposite direction, and that actually draws the fight into Osaka. Yeah. But the movie doesn't have the time or the production value to show you that really occurring. You're basically told, oh, the flares have gone off and they've distracted one monster and they've attracted another, and then before you know it, you're in the fight, and we'll get onto the fight.
Yeah, you're right. You are literally told that.
Yeah, and you don't actually see like, oh, Anguirus like being roused by these flares. Like you're just being told that, and that is the best part of the movie to me, is that oh, this is how we've tried to distract the monsters, and actually we've caused them to fight, which is what we were trying to avoid. And you could argue like, is there some depth there? Could we allegorize something in that? We were trying to prevent something and we've caused it with our behavior. But it is a fleeting moment in an otherwise very low quality movie, and I enjoyed some of the performances and like the acting. But yeah, it's thin on the ground. Like it's very sort of by the numbers. Like let's just see some fights and call it a day, basically.
I mean, when I was writing that synopsis and reading it back as well, just there, it was weird how little I talked about Godzilla. And it was about them fishing and moving their HQ and stuff like that, and
flying
it was like
planes around.
Yeah, and it's like the only bit I mentioned about Godzilla or Anguirus was they fought once and then they fought again. That's kind of it, you know.
And when you see the second fight, it's hard to believe that Anguirus survived the first one.
Well, they just fell in the water, right?
Yeah, but it's just like Godzilla doesn't have any issue like killing this like opponent to me.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying is like if Anguirus comes across Godzilla, Anguirus that's his numbers up. Like, you know, falling into the water and like escaping is like that's a stroke of luck for Anguirus, really.
Yeah,
so yeah,
it's true. Let's talk about a bit about the characters as we were just talking about them. So we've got Kobayashi, or Mr. Groom, who is played by Minoru Chiaki, who has just the best aim ever. How he managed to throw that message from his plane to that boat in the wind. Guy should be playing darts. Amazing. Do
you want to describe what it is you're referring to?
Remember where he was?
I know.
Oh, okay. Like... So yeah, he's flying around Hokkaido trying to help the fishing boats, and he sees his buddies down on this boat, and he's like, you know, however many thousands of feet up in the sky, and he flies around. Then he throws this, whatever it is, I don't know, it's a message
a
little tube with a message in it. I don't even remember what the message said. I was just like, how the hell did he land that on the plane?
It's basically, if I'm not mistaken, you're doing a good job down there with your fishing.
Yeah, it was something like that.
See you later.
Yeah. But yeah,
it might not have been that. But it
certainly wasn't
there was no revelry to it, I can tell you that for certain.
Did he write that while he was up in the sky, or did he write that before he left and was like, I hope I see them? And
maybe he's got like a cache of like miscellaneous notes.
Yeah, it's just like, which one should I send today? Which one's appropriate?
Like, your fishing down there is shocking. Can't believe you haven't caught any fish. But yeah, he basically like drops it like what, like 10, 15,000 feet onto like a speck from his perspective, and hits this boat.
And you actually see it from his perspective at one point. Because I thought they were like fish in the sea. I was like, what was this? There were boats.
Maybe the film did this like a kindness and just like cut out all the failed attempts of the message dropping. But this is the thing that you were talking about, is that like at this point in the movie, Godzilla has attacked Osaka, and there's been some stuff going on.
Yes, because that's why they're in Hokkaido.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
then it's like, it doesn't really give you a time frame, does it? But it's something like, it's a few months later or something.
Oh, this is kind of interesting because
right.
It seems like they just teleported there because of the way the film was cut.
It's some time later, I think. It's supposed to have been like a few weeks at least, I think. Because I assume it must be because, as you said, they're all so flipping cheerful now. Like
delighted.
Godzilla's destroyed this city. They're all traumatized. People have been killed. They're like, we got to go up coast to continue fishing and then avoid Godzilla and find Godzilla and blah, blah, blah. And they're just all like chilling out and having a good time. They're chucking each other notes and like, and you know, just doesn't seem like, it's just not the same vibe that you would expect from recently slaughtered population.
No. Who else have we got? We got Tsukuyoka. And he's in a couple with Hidemi.
Yeah, the more handsome of the two pilots in our story.
Right, so this guy was played by Hiroshi Koizumi, and you've seen him in another film.
Have I?
Yes.
Oh.
Maybe you can guess.
Western or Japanese?
Japanese.
Oh, no. Has he been in a more recent one as a different character or something?
He was in a Millennium film as a different character.
Is he the one, you know, there's that one where there's like a little boy and his grandpa and they take a little road trip with like baby Godzilla.
Oh, no, but it's you were close with the, you know, grandfather and grandchild thing there.
Which other ones have grandfather?
It was oh crap, which
one?
You think I'd remember which one it was? It was either
Tokyo
SOS or Against Mechagodzilla.
Well, Tokyo SOS, I believe, is the one I'm thinking of.
Which is the one with Mothra? Oh my god, we've done 2 episodes about this. You think we'd remember this?
Tokyo SOS has like loads of stuff in, doesn't it? And is that the one where? Oh no, there is. Maybe there is. Is there 2 different things? There's one where a child sets the chairs out in the playground.
It's that one.
Yes, and they attract Mothra, and that's a much better movie. Can't remember the title of it.
Yeah, so that was the sequel, and I remember you liked that one a lot.
Sure, because my expectations were lower or something.
On the floor, basically.
Can't remember what it was, yeah. I was optimistic that I would like it.
Yeah.
And then I did.
So he's the granddad in that.
Right, but then there is another movie with a granddad in a not dissimilar role. And
yeah, basically.
That's a different granddad.
Yeah, different granddad.
Right.
But yeah, so this guy, Hiroshi Koizumi, he's in whichever one of those two films it was. But this guy, he's one handsome devil. He's a very good looking man. And he's in because in the film that he was in where he was a grandfather, he was reprising his role from Mothra.
So, right, so he's in Mothra as well.
Yeah, he's in Mothra, yeah. So
that's a bit of interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. So, but yeah, like as soon as I saw his face, I was like, oh, I know this guy. What have I seen him in? And I was thinking of Mothra, and yeah. So yeah, it's quite interesting. So yes, this character Tsuburaya, he is former Air Force, but now working at the cannery, looking for fish. Just to boil it down, and then we've got Hidemi, who is played by Setsuko Wakayama. And she's one of the nags at the station, as Kobayashi put it. Those aren't my words. But yeah, so if we're going to talk about this love triangle, so
I'm interested to find out why you find it so disagreeable. Actually,
because
it sounds like you're just weighing quite heavily.
Yeah, it bugs me. So we essentially learn throughout the movie that Kobayashi has affections for someone. We suspect he might have a girlfriend or a girl he's got his eye on or something like that. And then just before he flies out to help with the whole Godzilla situation, he leaves his notebook, which has, a picture of the girl that he likes. And then Hidemi picks up his notebook and sees that it's a picture of her.
And obviously she's already in a relationship with the handsome pilot.
With the handsome pilot, exactly.
And then with that... he flies off. She finds out after he's left, as you said, that he likes her, and then he dies in that. He never comes back.
Yeah,
and it's never really resolved because there's no scene really of them like coming back after the whole. I mean, once Godzilla's dealt with in this movie, the movie kind of ends, doesn't it? But yeah, I kind of found that interesting in a way. Like, she knows that he likes her, and then he dies, and like she's with another guy, so it's kind of tragic. But like, there's conflict, so there's something. It's not great, but there was something.
Well, I could see it coming a mile off for a start.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So, but my issue with it is that I find, you
just don't like love, do you?
No, someone pining after their mates. Don't like love. Someone pining after their mate's girlfriend. Not cute. Not cute. I think really. It's in a real life situation. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say this, but we've known people like this. I find it's awkward and irritating. And yeah, just stop. It's only cute in movies. Like this is a fully grown person.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, when you see it on screen, you're right. It's easy for me to just detach it from reality a little bit, especially when the movie's old and more sort of from a more romantic era of cinema, shall we say. I would draw the line, for me, I would say having a crush on your best mate's girl is not great, but I would draw the line at putting a picture of her in your wallet.
That's exactly where I'm at with it.
But what I liked about it was the she found out and then he died. I thought that was an interesting idea in a movie reasonably devoid of ideas. I was like, okay, yeah.
I mean, you're right. I mean, for movies of that era, like I think a lot of the time people don't connect with movies from that era because of how stylized it is. That kind of it's romantic and the style is romance. So everything's kind of a bit kind of over the top and
idealized or sensationalized. And
so I think this kind of, it fits in that little category. I think that's a fair thing to say. And I do find, like, as much as I've said, I don't like the way they've done this, I don't like this idea of pining after your mate's girlfriend. But the idea of unrequited love is a powerful tool in film. And I fall for it. I love that kind of thing. It's most people can relate to that kind of thing. It's painful, it's whatever, but yeah, just the just the way they've done it's just didn't sit with me. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. I obviously hate love.
Yeah.
There we go.
I mean, this thing, we started this little segment because you were like, let's talk about the characters. I mean, there's nothing really else to say, though, is there? Like,
no.
Mr. Groom, as they call him, this guy who's got the unrequited love, he's a bit goofy.
Yeah.
He's a bit gawky. He's supposed to be less attractive than the other guy. And that's put across in a fairly reasonable way. Like, I don't think the film makes it too objective. You know, they don't like put ugly makeup on this guy or anything. It's like, he's just not the other guy. And the performance is fine, but like there isn't really anything beyond that. Like you don't really spend time with the characters that much. There's a scene where the lady, she looks unhappy a bit at a party. Yes. She's at a party where the entire building seems to be filled with men, except for her.
And I wonder if that's the reason. She was supposed to be uncomfortable in that situation with all these drunk men around?
I think it's a bit of both, where she's at this party post Godzilla attacking Osaka party.
Yeah, and they all went up to Hokkaido.
Exactly, yes. Yeah. I think it's a bit of both, that she's uncomfortable around all these drunk fellas, but also she's feeling like her boyfriend, who's also present, isn't really paying her any mind.
Is that what's going on?
Yeah, it's like she feels uncomfortable and he doesn't see that. He's not there for her, in a way, is what I got. And
someone made
the
a
goofy
joke,
guy,
didn't they? They're like, oh, who are you actually going to be marrying? Is it Kobayashi?
Yeah, and they ask him if he's allowed to drink and is he henpecked, and that this is in the subtitles, obviously, but... yeah, so they kind of jeer him about his relationship, and he doesn't really say like, "Hey, you know, I like my girlfriend" or whatever. He's just like, so I get the feeling she's getting a bit tired of him. Anyway, they put that in there, and then, like I say, Mr. Groom, you know, the goofy, weird, I've got a picture of you in my pocket guy comes in, and he's
with
sort
the
of
picture in his pocket.
Yeah, and they're saying like, "Oh, have you got a girlfriend?" And I always feel like I thought, and I don't know if I got the wrong stick about this. They start using after Godzilla attacks. And they go up to this other place to fish. They start using this terminology where like these pilots are looking for Godzilla and they're saying to him like, oh, you know, Mr. Groom, and they use some like sort of wedding analogies. And I was like, is Godzilla the bride? Is this like code? I was like, is this like code for them? Like they're looking for Godzilla? But no, like I guess it's that they think he's got like a secret girlfriend basically. And I was like, oh, right. I thought it was like so that I guess Godzilla wouldn't hear their messages or something. But, I just didn't get that until
it was basically it was a lame joke that just stuck basically. And he just forever became known as Mr. Groom. But like it seemed like they came up with the joke there and then, but then Hidemi's like, you know, oh, you know, how'd you get this nickname kind of thing? It's like, well, you were there, right? You were there when in the burning rubble when the joke was made.
I thought it was just like a call sign.
You know, this is part of the problem with this film is the script, or maybe a combination of the script and the direction. Like I couldn't follow a lot of the conversation.
No,
like there was lots of unnatural reactions to things in the conversation. Like when they said about going to Hokkaido, Hidemi was like, "Oh, darn," but smiling. And I was like, what do I need to grab here? I couldn't figure out what was going on. Like, and there's that point where, you know, they suddenly teleport to Hokkaido, you know, like the next scene. And it's like, oh yeah, we came up here as quickly as we could. And it was just things like, because like Kobayashi was already there. And it's like, well, why didn't they just all go up together? Why did you make a point of them going up separately to then just put them both there at the same time on the film anyway? I couldn't figure out why all these disparate events were happening and the reactions people were having in different conversations.
I think it's two things really, isn't it? This is the big thing, is that the movie was rushed out, so things have not been refined. But
yeah, it felt like I feel like there was an unfamiliarity with different cogs in the machine. So like the director and the actors probably didn't really get a good grasp of the script or what was going on potentially.
They probably filmed all this stuff pretty rapidly and didn't spend much time talking about what they were going to do or anything. But this is the other thing, is like, yes, it was rushed, and then the result is that you get quite a boring movie. And this is the other thing, is that boring films are quite hard to follow.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just feel like it's a you know, just a bit of a calamity really there.
I think they tried
self-defeating in a way.
I think they tried to spice it up with things like there was that whole prison break thing. So when they did,
I forgot all about that.
Yeah, with good reason, because it doesn't go anywhere. Like,
well, this is what I thought.
So they have the blackout in Osaka, and
Right.
And they need to evacuate certain sections, right? And so they transfer some people from a prison to presumably another prison somewhere else. But in the middle of this, the prisoners in a couple of the vans, or one of the vans, they revolt. They manage to escape. And then some cops manage to flag down Tsukioka to be like, hey, chase those criminals. And then they do. I think some of them, in their van, they fly into like an oil tanker or something and it blows up. And then some others see Godzilla and then run away into this tunnel, and then it gets flooded and all this kind of stuff. But then it doesn't. Then that's kind of where it ends. It's like, what was that all about?
It's that their escape leads to the fire being caused at the oil refinery, and that's part of what draws Godzilla in, like that light, from the flames.
Oh, right, okay. I'm being really.
But I don't want to be patronising, but I'm getting the sense that you didn't realise that until just now.
You know what? To be honest, I was like making food at that specific moment. So, because I figured, you know what? There's a car chase, blah, blah, blah. I didn't really. Yeah, okay, that's just me being dumb. Yeah,
well,
okay, I'm glad you explained it to me. At least it's given it, some context of why we're even seeing this thing happen.
I actually really liked the prison break thing, to be honest with you, and I completely forgot that it was even in the movie.
I liked it too, actually.
In fact, I was struggling to pay attention to it because it was so boring, and I thought, Ben's going to be mad at me if I don't watch this movie properly. When I was watching the prison break, this is how I would have done it. This is how I'd fix this. So yeah, the city's been... there's a blackout, like we say, they don't want Godzilla to come, and then the prison break causes the fire, and that attracts Godzilla. But you've only just met the prisoners during this sequence. It's like, well, they're being transported because, they need to move people away as an evacuation. Mm-hmm. But it would have been more interesting to me if the film had actually opened with the prisoners being transported for a completely non-Godzilla related reason.
Right.
And the escape happens, and then those characters who are on the run, you follow them partially through the movie, so they become some of the characters. Like, that would have been really interesting. Like, oh, there's a Godzilla film here, but also we've got these characters who've like escaped from prison, and then later they go on to cause the fire, and then that, more of a narrative basically. Like, I thought that was a really interesting bit when it's like, at first I was like, why are we seeing these prisoners be transported? And then they escape from the van, and there's a bit of a car chase, and like, it was very comical actually. The acting was dreadful because when the prisoners were running away, they keep falling over.
Yes, yeah.
And it feels like the actors or the director decided that to make it look like they're running away really frantically, they must be like stumbling and falling over all the time.
Yeah.
But the actors do it in such a hammy, like deliberate way where they're just like rolling around, and like they take like 2 steps and they do a roly-poly, and it's just like, it is literally like clowning around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found it really interesting. Like, these characters are like, ne'er-do-well types, and they're on the run, and then they end up causing like Godzilla attack, and like, so yeah, I was like, oh, there was something. Again, it was like, I don't want to praise this because it was kind of a big nothing.
Yeah.
But I'm like, with a bit more time, with another 6 months on the clock, they could have worked that into something quite interesting.
Yeah, I agree. They really could have, because it felt like there was the kernels of something a bit more interesting there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we had, I was just thinking about the characters again, we had Yamane, he was back for basically what was a cameo.
Now, to legitimise this movie, basically.
Yeah.
They've got his face on the poster as well, and it's just like, yeah, okay.
Because, he was a big star, so...
Right, yeah, of course.
Yeah, rope him back in. So I think his appearance in it, he just highlighted how out of place he was with the rest of the film, because, like, he still was quite, dour, like his character, and it just felt like what it was. We just need him there, stick him in there quickly, and it just seemed a bit strange.
In the previous movie, we had all this conflict about like, we want to use the oxygen destroyer to kill Godzilla, and then there's like, Professor Eye Patch is like, I'm going to kill myself, so you can't use this device ever again. And there you go, Godzilla and him are both killed, end of movie.
Yeah.
And now Godzilla's back, he wasn't dead, so that sacrifice was like for nothing. And also, not only is the sacrifice pointless, we don't even have that weapon anymore. So this guy comes back, and he should be like bringing that sort of sorrowful like vibe into it. Like, oh, the previous movie has now been rendered pointless, and perhaps intelligently so, they don't draw any attention to the fact that like they've kind of undone the whole film just for the sake of making another one. But the fact that it doesn't mean anything at all is very kind of telling, and just like, this is kind of meaningless. Like, there's no, apart from his presence, which is just to watch those silent film highlights of Godzilla's previous antics, and then he leaves. There's no reason for him to be there. So it's kind of just like, yeah, it is just like bums on seats. Remember this guy from the last movie? Yeah, this is a sequel, yeah. And it's just like, no, yeah. Because they don't talk about the first movie at all, other than him being there for a little bit. And then it's just like, whatever.
Yeah, because he advances I think it was at the end of 54. He was saying like, oh, this could happen again. You know, there could be another Godzilla. And then
Does he say that?
Yeah, he's like, oh, if we... Something, I can't remember his exact words, but it's something along those lines, right?
I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
But we've proven our memories aren't great. Okay?
Yeah, that's what we've established today.
You want it? You've got it. I've said it now.
The one thing I do remember is one thing you said. I think it was in the very first episode we recorded. I'm saying like, hopefully by doing this we can cement these films in our mind, because like we're very forgetful, and like if we've just proven that no, that doesn't happen. We could watch these films again; it'd be like a new movie.
They do tend to become a big ball. The Millennium Era, especially. He's like just a one big like event.
Yeah. But an event's a good way to put it. That's a nice way to put it. But yeah, so Yamane, he advances that theory as well in this film that, you know, the lights blinking remind him, like, give him flashbacks of the hydrogen bomb testing, which I thought was quite a cool callback to 54, because like your favorite scene in 54 was when the reporters were on that tower with the flashing lights, and I was like, oh, you know, because he went towards that tower, and I was like, oh, that's quite a nice little, you know, bit of continuity there.
And they may be trying to maintain some connections to the real world events, obviously, though, have also inspired the movies too, but it's very fleeting.
So now we've got this new Godzilla, and I think this is the same Godzilla now throughout the entire of the Showa era.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, right.
Unless a future movie states otherwise, it's definitely the same one as the previous movie. So
as the previous movie?
As Godzilla, you know.
What do you mean?
So the Godzilla in this film and the Godzilla in Godzilla 54, same guy.
No.
Yes.
No. So this is a new Godzilla.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because like the other one, you saw his bones. He's gone.
Oh, yeah.
So now this is the new one, and this is the one that's like, you know, we see this guy throughout the rest of Showa. Yeah.
This is the worst episode we've ever recorded.
It's horrendous, isn't it? Oh my god. Oh god. Sorry everyone. We'll scrape through. You know, it's because this film's, you know, there's not as much to grab onto as 54. Let's just say that.
It's the film's fault. Yeah.
Yeah, let's blame the film. But this Godzilla, specifically, I think we get a bit of bastard Godzilla here, because, you know, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's a bit of an asshole.
Is he a body or is he a bastard?
Yeah, and like I just get the feeling like he's in apex mode. He's an arsehole. Right, yeah. You know, he's really gunning for Anguirus.
Well, if we're to believe that there was first of all, we thought there was one Godzilla and they offed him, and now there's another Godzilla, and that was probably his only friend.
Absolutely.
So no wonder he's a bit of a bastard.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. That's a good way to put it. And then, yeah, we've got Anguirus as well, who is so underutilized, really. It's kind of outside of the fact they wanted another monster in there. It's like, why was he there?
Like I said at the beginning, that's the natural progression, isn't it? I mean, I feel like they weren't super creative. But again, I guess it's the early part of the kaiju, so, you know, he's a hedgehog kind of guy.
Yeah.
So I mean, at least he's different. They could have just been
another
like,
Godzilla.
Here's another Godzilla. Yeah. So, you know.
True. So I expect, even though, you know, we saw Anguirus get killed, you know, bitten on the neck and burnt, I still expected him to return for like a final fight at the end. I just felt like he was gone too soon. I assumed he was coming back for the big final fight to kind of close out on. But that didn't happen, and I found that really, I don't know. I was like, oh, right, that would be the climax, and then it wasn't. It was just, you know, a lot of snow was the climax.
That's what I mean, really, is that Anguirus was so easily dispatched in the end. I find it hard to believe that he was ever an opponent to begin with. This guy's an inconvenience at best. Don't come for me, Anguirus. But
so the special effects of this, I feel like they did try to push the envelope to some degree, and I think it was probably difficult in the time frame they were given. But you could see there was some effort there. Like some of the close-up fights are like, okay, let's try using puppets. You can see some of the puppetry there, which is in its own way kind of interesting. You could probably achieve some things that you couldn't do in a suit.
Some articulation, shall we say?
Yeah, things like that. Yeah, especially with the head moving. Like Anguirus was doing a lot of that, rolling his head around like the like that. Was it that statue in Art Attack?
Niche reference.
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, there was a kids show, like an art show called Art Attack, and basically there's this kind of
it's a
side
bust,
character. Yeah, so it's a bust in a museum that's
supposed
talks.
to look a Greek statue head,
yeah,
like Caesar or something.
And whenever he laughs, he rolls his rubbery neck around and is just like laughing like an idiot.
Quite an impressive puppet, if I recall, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have like some things like Godzilla's got some eye movement as well on the suit. That's quite interesting. And you mentioned the
boggling action going on there.
Yeah. And you mentioned the station getting flooded with that kind of composite shot. I really like that. I mean, you could see kind of the edges of composition there. But
what they do is it's a double exposure, like it's in camera.
Yeah,
it's like with a composition you would have to go and match up two pieces of film after the fact.
Yep.
Whereas in these cases they're literally running the film through twice, and if they screw it up, they can't go at it again. They can't produce another copy of it and try the composition a second time. As expensive as that may be. So yeah, they film one bit and then they film the next bit using literally the same material. So if it's misaligned, the miniature and the full scale human or whatever it is, it's not going to look good, and they can't do anything about it. And I think what you're seeing is evidenced that they spent a lot of time on this, being quite meticulous in 54, and then I think the subway flooding shot is very good. The water, the miniature, the actors, it all looks pretty good, but you can see it's just not aligned perfectly.
Yeah.
And it's time. They just haven't got the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, so this is where it really kind of lets itself down. I mean, you have some almost spectacularly bad moments, like when they're flying over Kamiko Island, the icy island.
Yeah, towards the end.
Yeah, you see that Godzilla from a bird's eye view. You see him down there, just standing there, and it's like it looks horrendous.
He's just static, just literally just stood
like a stone.
Because I read. Did you read about this?
Yeah, go on.
It was supposed to be like a wind-up toy sort of thing that like it would walk.
Yes,
and it didn't look good. Like I guess it like looked fake, so they thought, oh, we'll just have him stand still. And I can't imagine how bad it looked walking if it looked better doing nothing.
Yeah, right. I kind of want to see footage of it moving, to be honest. Yeah, just not a great moment. And then the atomic breath, they had to use it. They had to do it with a puppet instead, and I think they just kind of sprayed water or mist or something.
Yeah,
because the new Godzilla suit mouth wasn't wide enough to do fire. And then you've got some of the fights that it looks like, really dodgy, unchoreographed sumo wrestling. And then apparently, like, because some of the shots are like so fast.
Yeah.
It's because the camera op or whoever, they undercranked or overcranked? They undercranked it, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, they undercranked the shot so that when it was played back, it was sped up basically, so it was like double speed.
Yeah.
And
do you want me to go over the concept of over and under cranking for people listening who might not understand what that means?
Yeah, go on.
So like in the olden days of cinema, you would have to physically crank the film through the camera to take the pictures that make up the moving image. And if you crank it at the correct speed, which is 24 frames per second, it looks natural, just like we see things with our eyes. If you overcrank with the camera, that means you're moving the film through the camera faster and taking more pictures, which then has the effect of when it's played back, there's so many more images within the frame, it looks slower because you're seeing more time on camera.
Exactly.
So when you want to film something that looks big, like Godzilla fighting another monster, you want to have that big lumbering, slow-moving scale effect. You would overcrank it, take more pictures, faster, play it back, it looks slow, he's a big guy. And they screwed it up on Raids Again, and they undercranked it, which is that you're turning the film through more slowly when you film it, but that has the effect of taking fewer pictures, which then when you play it back, there's so few frames of them fighting that actually it looks really, really fast. And so that's why we say overcrank or undercrank, and that's where the effect comes from. And they literally and like we were talking about just now, and we got it confused in our mind. Is it over or is it under? They must have had this conversation on set of Raids Again.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, we'll undercrank it because under slower, right? Because that's what you naturally think.
Yeah.
But no, that means you're taking far too few frames. And it isn't like how things are now with digital cameras. We could film something at like 50 frames and we can slow it down or speed it up, and we still can undo those things and rework stuff. Like, with the other effects we've already described, if you film this wrong on set, that's it. You can't, it's done.
Yeah.
They spent their money, the day's gone. They screwed it big time, and that's why all these fight scenes look like they're moving like 3 times faster than even a normal human being could, because they filmed it wrong, and they should look like they're moving like quite a lot slower. So there you go.
No, yeah, that's exactly it. So I mean, Tsuburaya, the special effects director, apparently he was absolutely pissed when he found out. Yeah, because this is the thing that the movie's about. Yeah, and there was no money or time left to do it, so it had to go out like that.
It's staggering, really, to think that they looked at the final film and even the studio was like, no, I can't redo that. And I get, like, there's a lot of miniatures involved. They can't redo those miniatures and break them again, and you can't redo some shots in slow-mo and have the rest be sped up. Like, it's just totally fucked it.
I think the Osaka castle as well.
Yeah,
that was something they had to keep rebuilding it because they kept messing it up, and it just sounded like absolute hell.
Imagine watching it back in the, when you're watching the dailies, it's like, hold on a second, you're playing this at the wrong speed. No, this is the right speed. Well, let me have a look at that film. Why is this film so short? I don't get it. And it's like, no, you just like pissed away like tons and tons of money, and it looks bad.
Yeah.
But clearly, and we were talking about this movie, saying it's not that great and lamenting its lack of quality, right? But it hasn't harmed the Godzilla franchise, has it?
No, it seemed to have helped it.
Because here we are. So,
So yeah, okay, we could talk about some of the stronger elements. I think the cinematography, I think it was much brighter, elevated the mood, and it felt more like an adventure with these characters, which I think was the intent. They didn't want it to be like you were saying. They'd listened to feedback from 54. Too sad, too depressing. Let's bring it back up a bit. And I think they achieved that, if that's what they were trying to do. I think they nailed that aspect.
It's a more popcorn movie, and it doesn't have it has an uneven tone if you take the previous movie into consideration, but in isolation, the movie has a pretty stable tone. So but then you still do get some, I think, genuinely good horror moments. And I think, Godzilla, whenever there's a good horror moment in a Godzilla film, I tend to bring it up. I love horror films, obviously, and all of that. And I think we've established that Godzilla can do horror quite well. So when he's like coming up from coming out of Osaka Bay, I think that's creepy as anything. Like where the flares are going, and you see kind of Godzilla's head rising out of the water, and he looks like totally messed up. It's I think that was a strong moment there, and like the music for that moment, actually, I think was, for what little music there was, that's quite a standout piece. And I said the same thing about 54, like when he comes out of Tokyo Bay, it's the same kind of thing. It's the same moment essentially, but in a different place. They did that well. But actually, speaking about the music, as you said with the scene with Yamane, where he's showing the that newsreel footage of, which was basically just a trimmed down version of Godzilla 54. Yeah, he was showing that to that conference.
God, that was so dry. No, like you're saying, completely silent, and it's like the longest 2 minutes of your life.
And it really lets you know this is kind of what you're in for, guys. Like we're rehashing it with as little effort as possible, really, because they're just going to show you the original movie, and like, yeah, they could have just plonked some music under that.
Yeah, yeah. So the composer Masaru Sato, he's even not a fan of his work on this film. He's quoted as saying like it was like listening to a child learn music.
Jeez.
Or something along those lines, which is like, I think quite a harsh thing to say about about yourself. Really, I wouldn't have put it that way, but you do get the impression that there's not much time to do this. Give us what you can, and we'll use whatever we can. And yes, some bits just have no music at all. There's just nothing there. It's quite a strange choice because you could have just reused some music, right? Especially if you're going to have 2 minutes of stony silence, like just pop something in there just to, even if it's just like people wouldn't be like, oh, how come there's with this creepy music playing over this Godzilla montage? They'd be like, oh, no one would ever think that, it's music for the film. You'd never make the association that that's what they're all hearing as well within the movie.
Or have somebody narrate it, like have Yamane talk about the events. Something. So, okay. Did you watch Gigantis, the fire monster? The westernized version?
Yes.
No, I did not have time, unfortunately.
Okay, well,
I intended to.
Okay.
But no, I didn't.
Okay, we'll move on to that in a second. But yeah, you're right. That would have been absolutely fine to kind of fill that moment with something. Yeah, it's a shame.
That would have been the perfect time to talk about, I didn't want to kill Godzilla, but we did, and so-and-so is not here anymore, sacrificed himself, and give us some, maybe find a way to give you some fresh insight into Yamane's perspective on those events, given that now he's had some time to reflect on them. The characters change as time goes on. Yeah. But no,
none of that. It does make me wonder whether there was supposed to be a bit of music there and it just never got done. Maybe.
It seems entirely likely.
Yeah. But, something that I did like about this, audio-wise, was Anguirus' roar.
Yeah.
Which was, I've listened, if you listen to the soundtrack for this film, it actually has the samples in isolation. You can listen to them all.
Wow.
So basically it's a combination of saxophone, harmonica, oboe, and a tuba, like all together, like mashed up to make this roar. I didn't realise the samples were on there when I was listening to it. So when it got to that point on the soundtrack, I was like, what the fuck is this noise? But yeah, it's again, like another nice creative way to make a roar. I love all that, and I like Anguirus' roar. I think it's quite cool. So there's still, even with all these time constraints and stuff, there's still some creative stuff going on in there. It's just yeah,
they did a very good job of making the two monsters sound different, which they didn't really have to do. They could have phoned that in, but clearly they spent some time giving Anguirus their own character, which is nice.
Yeah. Okay, so I mentioned Gigantis. So for anyone who isn't aware, there is a Western version of this movie. It's not quite the same as the 1956 King of the Monsters, which was the westernized recut version with new scenes of 54.
Steve Martin.
Bless. So initially, the US had intended to remove all the drama from this film and make a new movie called...
Oh, right. Power Ranger style.
Yes, exactly. And call it Volcano Monsters.
Why not, eh? Why not?
Yeah. So
I know why not. But...
basically Godzilla was going to fight an Ankylosaurus.
Okay.
And for some reason was going to put down roots in the North Pole to lay eggs. But anyway, it got canned because the distributor, they went bust. So then later on, the film basically got butchered into a different film, Gigantis, the Fire Monster, a few years later in 1959. So But the original company, they had planned to shoot new scenes, you know, for the Volcano Monsters. So Toho sent out the original Godzilla and Angie suits.
Wow.
For the shoot, but apparently they'd vanished and no one knows where they are. So, you know, keep an eye on Depop. Might get lucky. But I find I kind of find this film a bit more interesting than Raids Again.
I wish I'd watched it now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you...
But would it be interesting if you hadn't seen the other one?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a mess. So...
Maybe we should revisit it on its own someday. But not that interesting.
Not that interesting.
Okay, you go on then.
Yeah. So, to start with, they've got... they mix up the names of the monsters. So, the original... When they're showing the footage of Godzilla, the 1954 Godzilla,
sure,
they refer to it as Anguirus.
Lovely. And
then the new Godzilla is called Gigantis.
Correct.
And then Anguirus is called Anguirus.
Well, yes.
So there's Anguirus, Anguirus, and Gigantis. They mix up the island names as well. They mixed up the roars. So sometimes Godzilla's using Anguirus's roar. There's some really bizarre dubbing, and there's what I gather was quite a fairly well-known line where Tsuburaya says, banana oil to Hidemi, because like they're trying to match the mouth movements, and that was the only phrase they could come up with that looks like that. And it's like, it's just out of nowhere. He just says, banana oil. I think he's kind of saying like, no, that's rubbish kind of thing. You know, it's like, no, that's
what, and
ridiculous.
they couldn't just say humbug.
They
couldn't just say bar humbug. They've got to say banana oil.
It's just, absolutely surreal. But I mean, the idea for this kind of Gigantis recut was that it wasn't meant to be a Godzilla film, and they wanted to market it as a dinosaur monster film.
Right.
Why? I can't understand. I don't get that. It's like, well, just why not make it a Godzilla film? Godzilla was popular enough, right? With King of the Monsters. Surreal. I just don't really understand.
No.
But it did have a great poster, actually. Yeah, that's one thing going for it. But it's George Takei who does the narration and voice of Tsuburaya.
Oh, yeah.
So that's quite interesting. And during that conference recap of 54, he's narrating that whole bit. So
so he's telling what happened. I guess they've kind of got to make something up, haven't they?
Yeah.
Even that they can't recount the events of the first movie if they're going to pretend it didn't happen.
So well, he doesn't really. Yeah, it doesn't really make up that much. Basically, it just describes what's happening. But
did they act like Gigantis has previously attacked the city then?
Yeah, they just change his name. That's all.
Oh, all right. So that's so weird though, because they could just have you on like, this happened like a couple of days ago.
Yeah, you could say, it's the same one again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even just cut that scene altogether.
So they chuck in a bit more stock footage to kind of give, some things a bit more context about, where people are and where the nation is and stuff like that. But honestly, the narration is relentless. It's constant throughout the whole film, and it leaves no room for nuance whatsoever.
No thoughts of your own.
None, absolutely none. So the at the end of the film where, Godzilla's been buried
under ice,
and Kyoko's like, he looks quite mournful. He's like, well, I've lost Kobayashi, but we defeated Godzilla. And you get all of that just from the way he's looking, from acting, right? But that whole scene is like, I wrote it down. He says, "As I looked down, I thought of my buddy Kobayashi, and tears came to my eyes. I lowered my head as I remembered how he died for us, died for all of us." And it's like, that doesn't need narrating. That doesn't need saying. It's the classic case of show don't tell.
Yeah.
I think you should watch it.
Okay. I might email drop in a few scenes one day.
Yeah. But and then they kind of tacked on this awful kind of sort of happy ending where Tsukioka and Hidemi are on top of that building that they were at, where they're having that party before the attack in Osaka. They're back there and they're looking at the moonlight above the ocean and they're saying, and we'll live on in happiness together. But the footage that they used was of the two of them on the top of the building from earlier on, but they're both looking really tense. And it was just like, because they wanted to make a happy ending. That was the only footage they had, so they just used it. It's, something special.
I don't think we've really covered it well enough that the way they defeat Godzilla in this movie is that they bury him in ice.
Yeah, that's it. So they're shooting missiles at the side of the mountain.
They create an avalanche, don't they?
Yeah. Create an avalanche and it buries him. And
it's just so stupid, though.
Yeah.
It's going to keep him occupied for a day.
Yeah, how hard is it to...
It's ice. Anyway, let's not get into it.
It was real ice for the actors.
Yeah,
it was from the ice machine from a nearby ice skating rink.
When they're bombing the ice to create this avalanche, which it takes like literally 5 minutes of continuous bombing, of virtually no dialogue, just little model planes flying around and around and around, dropping bombs on ice, and Godzilla's going, ice, God. And it's the same explosion sound effect for every single bomb.
Yeah.
So I think you should put a little clip of it in, just so people can hear the same bomb going off 3 times in a row. And then imagine that for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it was so kind of relentless, it actually drummed itself out of my memory. And I'm just coming back to it now because you were talking about the way the Western version handled the ending. And I was like, man, that was dire. That was real dire. Like, they couldn't just have like 2 or 3 explosion sounds. Just relentless. Yeah. And he's going to get out. He's going to get out. I mean, spoilers, he does get out. We know he gets out of the ice.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay, so do you have
they go to such lengths to kill Godzilla in that first movie, and it's all, most of the second half of the movie is about, we've got to kill Godzilla, we've got to use this weapon, this is the only way.
Yes.
We just bury him in some ice then. If only we thought of that.
Do you have a favourite moment from this film that we've been dunking on for the last however long?
The miniatures were truly outstanding.
Agreed.
So whenever there was a miniature on screen, and it's quite a wonderful thing in a way that you look at this miniature of a building, or a what do they call them? A Japanese castle. I can't remember the word now.
Osaka Castle.
No, it's got a Japanese word, hasn't it? What is it?
I was thinking of a pagoda, but I don't think that's it.
It is pagoda. So you're looking at these miniatures, right?
These miniature pagodas.
They're so well made. They're so well made, but they're designed to be destroyed. So whilst you're looking at them and you're appreciating them, how wonderfully produced they are,
detailed,
they're serving their purpose, which is to fall apart. And you're like, it's a shame, such a shame that these things are being broken, and ripped apart. But that's what they're for, and it's an interesting kind of artistic thing. But yeah, there's some close-ups of some office buildings. There's a castle. All of the miniatures just look fantastic, and that is really the movie's major strength, I think, actually, is that for all the other faults in the special effects, which we covered, these buildings look great.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
No, you're absolutely right. It's it's for the people making the miniatures. Like, I mean, I would love to know how they feel about it. You're seeing it it's up for 5 minutes and then it's just getting completely stomped to pieces.
But I think it's like with anything you do, when you do something really well and you're making a film or a piece of media like this, if you do really good sound editing or set dressing or costume design or anything really, people don't notice it, and therefore it served its purpose. Like, if people can look at these miniatures being blown to pieces and not think that's a miniature, which, to be fair, obviously at this point, yeah, but I imagine in 55 that was a less common assumption, then you're doing your job. So I think there's a real they probably take a lot of pride in that, actually, that if the buildings look fantastic, not only when they're stood there but also when they're being broken apart. It's like, this is great. I mean, because they must use particular materials, because you couldn't just use anything, could you? You've got to use a material which both can be decorated to look like a scaled building, and also when it breaks apart, it looks like a building being broken apart.
I think sometimes they use like wafers and food and things like that.
So it's very, very highly skilled, and I think, you know, if it serves its purpose, which they really do very well, then I doubt there is much regret regarding that.
I imagine most of the regret would be from a failed shot, and they're like, oh, you have to rebuild it.
Yeah.
I imagine that's probably the most painful part.
You have to keep in mind that the end product is not actually the miniature, it's the shot, isn't it, of it being destroyed. So
yeah.
There you go.
That's good point. Good strong miniature work there. My favourite moment, which I think I already mentioned actually, was the flares over Osaka Bay.
Because it creepy implications.
Yeah, it was just, everything about that was just it was a good couple of minutes sequence there, and seeing Godzilla come out of the bay was just, you know, great. Any horror moment in Godzilla, big thumbs up from me. Smashed it. Really good. Really, really good. That's that was my top moment. So out of kind of worry that we wouldn't have much to talk about in this episode after watching this film, I prepared a little quiz just to help pad things out a little bit. Are you ready for another quiz, Graham?
I'm always quiz ready.
Brilliant. That's what I like to hear. Okay, so there are 5 questions, and they are all multiple choice.
Oh,
which is
my strong suit.
Yeah, I feel it's a bit kinder as well. Here we go. Question number 1. There was a direct sequel penned, but never produced. What was it called? Was it A, The Abominable Godzilla, B, The Rage of Godzilla, or C, The Bride of Godzilla?
I'm going to say Rage.
Incorrect.
Is it Bride?
It's Bride.
I knew it! I knew it was Bride, and I thought, no, he's going to trick me. But I have heard that. I've heard that before.
I think we might have spoken about it before, just like that conversation. There was direct sequel planned called Bride of Godzilla, where scientists created a female robot designed to kill Godzilla, and he would eventually have fallen in love with her and then take her to his colony of surviving Godzillas, where she would then detonate a nuclear device and wipe them all out.
Well, missed that big time on this.
Yeah.
Flipping it.
Imagine that.
Get Warner Brothers on the phone. There's still time, monsterverse.
I do wonder whether some unplanned scripts would ever get referenced or something like that in future films.
Comic books, perhaps.
Yeah.
If that hasn't already occurred. If ever
probably
a piece
has.
of media exists, then maybe there is already a Bride of Godzilla comic book out there somewhere.
Probably. Okay, so question 2. Which of these was not one of Anguirus' original name ideas? So, Gyotos, Zotos, Osoros, Aegon, or Sugon?
Aegon.
Yes, correct.
Is that a Pokemon?
No, it's the name of a Dutch pension and insurance company.
Okay, close enough.
Basically the same thing. Okay, so question 3. Following this film, how long is it until audiences saw Godzilla in another film? Was it A, 1 year, B, 7 years, or C, 11 years?
7?
Correct.
Yeah, so I thought it was, I would have said it was 8, but it must be 7.
So, 1962 with King Kong versus Godzilla.
I always thought that was a 63 movie, but maybe that's the American date.
I think that was the American date, yeah.
But there you go.
But yeah. Okay, yeah, got that one. Okay, so question 4. Now this is an audio round. Oh. So, at what point do we hear this music?
Oh, it's very spooky.
Okay, so was it A, when Godzilla surfaces in Osaka Bay, B, when Kobayashi sacrifices himself? Or C, when we first see a glimpse of Godzilla on Iwato Island?
I'm going to say C, Iwato Island.
No, incorrect.
No.
It was actually when Kobayashi sacrificed himself. So it was when he dive bombed towards Godzilla.
I was just so wrapped with emotion.
To be fair, it is so quiet. The whole soundtrack is so quiet throughout this film. You'd struggle to pick some of it out.
Good bit of music though.
It is good, and it's so creepy. It's very good piece. That's why I think he was being too hard on himself with this composition. To be honest, I liked it. So yeah, sorry, didn't get that one. But question 5.
Okay.
Which of these is a real tagline for Gigantis the Fire Monster? Is it A, Born in Hell, B, Dragons Wage Unholy War, or C, Say Your Prayers, Gigantis has risen?
So which one is real?
Yeah.
I know which one I want it to be real. I think it's the last one. Gigantis has risen.
Incorrect.
Yeah,
it's Born in Hell.
So that was the least interesting one.
Yeah, I liked my ones more. I think, they should have got in touch with me. Got a time machine.
Yeah.
I could have sorted them out.
So how did I do?
How did
this
you do?
Time?
You got 2.
Ah! Good for me.
Well done. 2 is better than 0.
Thanks.
Okay, so let's go for our overall thoughts, which are probably already clear to most people. Overall, I think it's quite a snappy film. It's over in a flash. It felt like it was about 40 minutes long.
It's 80 minutes to be fair.
Yeah. It's a fairly short film. I feel like whereas the original film 54 had an ending that kind of gave you this feeling that there was no winner, so to speak. There's no side was right. No one really benefited from this situation.
Sure.
Raids, I actually feel almost specifically says, we won, like against all odds. Despite the fact that one of the characters died. Felt like almost like a display of defiance to some degree.
Just underneath some ice cubes, don't he?
Yeah. Well, they think they've won.
They have to be pretty naive to think that, but whatever.
So it feels like there's some evolution to what we've come to expect from a Godzilla film. It starts bridging that gap between the hardcore misery of 54 to the more action-based romps. But what lets it down really is it's a film with very little consequence. That, like I said before, it doesn't feel like there's any real threat. So any moments in it just don't really land as such. But we see we start shifting towards monster action movie territory. So this one doesn't have quite enough action that I'd call it an action film, but then also not enough story to call it a drama in any way. It kind of awkwardly straddles the two, and really, it makes for a fairly light experience. It still had heart with that ending, and you liked that whole aspect of Kobayashi liking Hidemi and stuff like that.
Well, I liked the tragic nature of it.
Yeah.
That's what I liked, just sort of like, oh, she's never going to get to say anything about this.
Yeah.
She's lived with this knowledge now.
Yeah.
Tragedy.
So it's quite nice to have that spoonful of that human element, which I think, even though I wasn't particularly a fan of the way they did it, the idea was still good, and it didn't detract from the main reason we're watching these films is to watch monsters fight, because something like that can often just get in the way. I don't feel like it got in the way with this film.
Yes, that's a fair point.
Yeah. So all in all, for me, it was a very easy, if unspectacular watch. You could stick it on a Sunday afternoon. I'd happily watch it again, but it really it ultimately feels like what it is, and it's the result of a studio saying, do the same thing again, please.
Yeah, which is something that studios still make the mistake of doing even now.
Yeah. Because they're a business. They need to make money, and that's just kind of the way it is.
Haven't lessons been learned though? And
I'm not excusing that, by the way.
No, I know you're not. But this is the thing. It's my perplexement of like, you mentioned Alien and Aliens earlier. It's like, I mean, there were several years between those two films, to be fair, but it proved that you could make a sequel that was quite different from the original, and you'd make a ton of money. And like, I know this might be a lightning in the bottle type situation with those two films, but it just shows you can sort of like, you can stray from the formula a little bit and still succeed. And then Alien, as a franchise, has been basically run into the ground by trying to remake Aliens ever since, which is the most bizarre thing.
Yeah.
But in terms of Godzilla Raids Again, I would say skip it unless you are a diehard Godzilla movie fan. It's a pretty poorly made film, though I expect through no fault of its actual production team for the most part, like we've covered. It has a couple of nuggets of goodness, which mainly serve as a foundation for better things to come.
Yeah.
Like the Anguirus fight and all that stuff. But yeah, this is not great. Bizarre footnote, actually, because it is relatively important to the future of the series, because the head-to-head battle has become the main attraction from here on out. And without this movie, that would not have ever happened. But then you could also argue that it doesn't really kick off proper until King Kong comes into the picture.
Yeah.
So, it's got some relevance, but it hasn't got as much value to today's audience, if you ask me. Its most interesting factor is looking at the mistakes they made and just talking about them. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend it even as background noise, to be honest with you. It's a film that you would sort of almost study in a way that we have to an extent, just like, what's going on here? And you would only do that if you were the most obsessive Godzilla fan. So I couldn't recommend it to anybody who wasn't already fully initiated into the kaiju way of thinking.
So I guess that answers the question of, would you recommend it to newcomers?
No.
No. Well,
I'd struggle to recommend it to veterans as well, honestly. But it's not bad. I mean, Megaguirus is the one that we've really ripped to pieces previously, the Millennium Era movie.
Yeah. That
was a bad movie. But this one is not actually bad. It's just it's that classic thing that
so middling.
It's in the middle where it's just like, this is just not good. And it's not really, really bad, but it's like slow. There's nothing really funny about the things that have gone wrong that much. So you couldn't watch it like on a bad movie night. It's far too shallow for a bad movie night.
You could watch Gigantis on a bad movie night.
Right, okay. So there's something to be said there, yeah. Drink every time there's narration and see how far you get.
Woof.
But that's the thing, is that middle of the road movies are just, they can be the worst thing. This is by no means an infuriating experience,
Not at all.
And I wouldn't even call it a missed opportunity in a way, because I guess it made money and it laid the groundwork for a lot more to come, which is a lot more better things.
I think
pass on this one.
So I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, you could recommend this to a newcomer. You could do, because
something you don't like.
Well, yeah, because it does explain what happened in 54 with that really long silent movie at the beginning. So you don't have to watch 54 if you weren't in the mood for something that heavy. So you could show it to a newcomer and they would know exactly what happened, and they'd be fine from there on out. So yeah, you could do, but would you? Nah.
On to bigger and better things.
Okay, so it's time for a new section of the podcast again, which is Kaiju Corner. So in this section, what do we talk about here, Graham?
We talk about times where Godzilla or other kaijus pop up in pop culture, other than, say, the movies that we're otherwise talking about and reviewing. So it's a way to highlight Godzilla's other antics, would you say? Yeah,
I think that's a good way to put it. So in the last episode, I mentioned how I had a rather disappointing at Yokocho Ramen with the Godzilla event that they had on there.
It's unfortunate.
If you're curious about that, go back and listen to the episode. But basically, it wasn't great. we complained actually to the restaurant, and
on the podcast.
And no, we actually sent them an email, and they're going to send us some vouchers for a free meal. Now, part of me is like, do I want to go back there? But they have other branches, it seems, so I could go to one of the other branches and use vouchers there.
Give it a go, give it a fair shake, Forgive and forget.
Yeah.
Have some noodles.
Yeah, it was good food. But they said about, because I was saying about the merchandise and I wanted to get some stuff. And so they said, it's on the Japan Center site. So I got myself a little mug because I was like, you know what, I want something Godzilla related.
Commemorate your bad night out with your with your girlfriend.
Exactly.
Every time I drink from this mug.
And then I also got you a mug, Graham.
Oh.
So next time I see you, you'll have a little gift from me.
I look forward to that. Is it like a mug for like a Godzilla sized drink?
No, it's as standard as it gets.
Okay.
Yeah, it's standard mug. Sorry.
No, that's all right. Thanks very much.
Yeah. So that's the update on that.
History has been recorded.
Yes. You see the development.
It all turned out all right in the end.
Yeah, basically. So yeah, for this episode, there was something specific I wanted to talk about, but I'm going to save that because I want to talk about it another time, really, because I feel like there's something slightly more newsworthy happened recently. So Call of Duty Warzone, the video game,
free to play, I believe. Free to play. If you are so inclined to install it on your platform of choice, it's free.
Yes. So in the next season of I don't know how it works in these games, but in the next season, the next episode, whatever it is, there's going to be a Godzilla and Kong feature in it in some way. So when they were announcing it, when they were showing the trailers for this, the first trailer I wasn't really following what was happening because I don't play Call of Duty games.
Me neither.
But there was these characters in this trailer. They hear this audio message, and it's a combination of the monsterverse orca sound and Godzilla's roar. And there were some tweets going out saying, there's a hidden message in the spectral graph of this audio message, and it says monsters are real. And then there was another trailer where it was showing some Godzilla looking weapons and a Kong camouflage weapon and stuff like that. And then the most recent trailer was where you actually see Godzilla and Kong kind of leap into a fight. So I'm not entirely sure how this works in a Call of Duty game.
No, I mean...
I know the last one I played, God knows how many years ago, well over 10 years ago now. I seem to remember there was, you could call in some airstrikes and stuff like that.
Or you could bring a helicopter, can't you? You can do
Yeah,
you can bring in other vehicles if you call them and stuff like that.
So I wonder if it's going to be something like that, like you can, call upon Godzilla to blast the map or something like that. I'm not entirely sure.
Maybe you could call in the atomic breath, but then I don't know what the Kong
slam his fist down somewhere.
Or
throw a tank or something.
Yeah, maybe.
Or a rock.
Neither of us are playing COD, as you said, and I would avoid pretty much any Activision game at this point anyway. But because it's Battle Royale, and you've got quite a large map, it does seem to suggest that the characters could be physically present in the game. That would be the top end of what you would want. If I was playing Fortnite or Apex Legends or Warzone and they had actual Godzilla and Kong on opposite sides of the map, that would be like, wow, this is great. The scale of it would be fun. But I can't see how they can actually do that. If that's what they're up to, that would be really fun.
Yeah.
But I don't know how they would implement it because I don't play the game, but I don't know.
But
I don't know.
It just got me thinking how few decent Godzilla specific games exist.
Oh yeah.
For such a big character and franchise to be falling behind like this it's disappointing, really, for me, for you, for anyone, really. The most recent Godzilla game I played was one of those kind of tapper games, where you just basically tap the screen.
A mobile game.
Yeah, it's a mobile game. It's like a card based game. And it was your usual, mobile game microtransaction nightmare.
Yeah.
So I gave up, really fast. But I mean, the last good one I played, and would be one we mentioned before, is Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee, and that was 18 years ago. No. So it's like that's when it came out. So
it's not 18 years since we last played it, though.
Not since we last played it, but that's when it came out.
Which is probably more like 14 years.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Which is it's sad, but I mean, so I thought I'd bring this up anyway because
timely.
It's timely. There are people listening that probably do play Call of Duty. They know exactly what I'm talking about. And
have a good time.
And for anyone who doesn't play it, maybe it's worth us keeping an eye on. Maybe it's something really good.
Oh, certainly check out a gameplay video. I mean, this is one of the problems with Call of Duty Warzone is that the install is gargantuan. It is quite literally Godzilla sized. Yeah. It is over 100 gigabytes and then some.
Wow.
So if you're installing COD on your PS5 or whatever it is, you better have another drive spare, or it's the whole reason you've got the system. PC players may not suffer quite as badly in that regard. But yeah, that's one of many reasons I've not bothered to install it, but not the only reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting, isn't it? And I would like to see... I'd like to see them be more creative with Godzilla in games. But I think that the kaijus have been, not necessarily Godzilla as a licensed thing, but you could probably find some other good kaiju games out there that,
Well, this is what I was going to bring up today, but I'll save it for the next one.
Fair enough.
So yeah, not really something specific to bring to the table this time, but I thought it was worth mentioning anyway. So, what about you?
Well, you might call this a kaiju coincidence.
Oh.
That I've also got a video game to talk about.
Okay.
So my kaiju...
Kebab.
What was it? Yeah, that was it. My kaiju kebab is filled with a spicy factoid from Super Metroid. You may already be aware of this, Ben, but some people who are listening may not know that the 1994 video game Super Metroid features many gruesome, grotesque boss fights. And when you defeat some of these bosses, they make the sounds from some famous Godzilla monsters, namely Anguirus. So, topical, you see.
Yeah.
So, if you're going to play Super Metroid, which I would highly recommend, still holds up pretty well, pretty great game. When you kill off Crocomire, he lets out the sound from Titanosaurus, who's a character we won't get to until Terror of Mechagodzilla, but that's the cry that Crocomire lets out. Mm-hmm. And then when you kill Dragon, which is like a green sort of flying sort of maggoty bug type creature, that lets out a sort of distorted Anguirus noise. So yeah, it's just like a little...
That's a
little stolen Godzilla Easter egg, you might say.
Yeah.
That you'd probably quite easily spot if you were a Godzilla fan before you played Super Metroid. But if you're a Godzilla fan who hasn't played Super Metroid, take this as your incentive to do so. And I've got the clips here, so we can play.
Well, let's play them now. Okay, no, that's cool. I seem to remember, because I hadn't played Super Metroid the whole way through until, was it last year before?
Last year, yeah.
Yeah, I'd played it but never finished it. So yeah, this is my time to just get it done, because Metroid Dread was coming out, and I wanted to play through Fusion, so I did all that. And I remember, I think I was talking to you, and I think you mentioned about the Godzilla sound. I think one of them is Godzilla's roar, right?
As far as I've swatted up again today, because I didn't just play Super Metroid, but I don't think they used Godzilla's roar, but there are other instances of this happening. Another example of a video game company basically stealing Godzilla sound effects would be like Street Fighter. When you play Street Fighter 2 on Fei Long's stage, when you complete a fight, you hear a mixture of Anguirus and Mothra's cries.
All right.
Because there's like little animals. There's like a peacock and like a dragon statue in the background, and when you win, they move and it makes this sound.
Yeah.
But no, I can't recall. This is the thing, isn't it? That Nintendo and Capcom, they might try their luck with Anguirus, but I don't think they're going to sneak in a little Godzilla sound. I'm not sure.
Well,
that would maybe a bit too on the nose. They might get some lawyers on the phone, but I don't know.
Nintendo's not afraid of doing this kind of thing. I mean, like Earthbound, there's so many samples from actual songs in there, just distorted. It's
that's true, but I feel like it's a bit different when you mix it into a soundtrack and sort of hide it versus what these two games do, especially in Super Metroid. It is just the sound. So I don't know. You can split hairs over these things.
Yeah, I
as far as I'm aware, you don't hear Godzilla himself in Super Metroid.
Right. Well, okay. No, that's a good one. I didn't realize it was so many roars actually. Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, that kind of does it for today's episode. Thanks for bearing with us through that. It was I feel kind of mean. I feel like we ragged on it a lot, and then there were points in this recording sounded woefully underprepared. It's just, I think part of it is that, we have terrible memories, and this wasn't really that good of a film to talk about, in all honesty. So, yeah. I
mean, apologies aside, I feel sometimes the movie begets the discussion, and sometimes the movie gets the discussion the movie deserves. That's all I'll say about that.
That's, good way to...
Maybe I'll write some notes next time, I don't know.
No, good way to wrap it up. Okay, so where can people speak to you, Graham, if they want to speak to you or hear you, etc., etc.?
I want them to speak to me via the correct channels of the Monster Island radio channels.
Do you remember the account names?
Oh, a second quiz. I believe you can contact Monster Island Radio via Twitter on at Monster Island RP.
Yes, correct.
And
that's another point. That's a bonus point.
And then on Instagram, if you are so inclined to contact a podcaster via Instagram, you can contact us at Monster Island Radio.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. And then I think that's it, isn't it? We don't have any other social handles.
Yeah, that's it. You can comment on YouTube or...
Yeah, do the 5-star thing on your podcast platform of choice.
Yes, Spotify has it at the top. So if you go to the channel page, go to the top, you can rate there. You can do it on Apple as well and on YouTube.
We get something out of that, presumably.
Just the satisfaction that we've pleased some listeners.
Yeah, we're not doing this for money. We're just doing it for fun.
Yeah, exactly.
So click 5 stars or don't. I don't know.
If you're not going to do 5 stars, just don't do
it. Yeah, no stars.
Yeah. For me, if you want to see any of my drawings or anything like that, it's Ben M.R. Hall on Instagram and Twitter. And yeah, so I think that's anything else you want to mention before we wrap it up?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
No.
So yeah, thank you everyone for listening again. Really appreciate it. So until the next episode, whichever one that may be, I'm not sure yet. Hopefully, we'll record it in a decent time frame again, like we have with this episode.
It'll be as soon as possible.
As soon as we can, honestly. So until then, everyone, bye.
Bye.
As I looked down, I thought of my buddy Kobayashi, and tears came into my eyes. I lowered my head as I remembered how he had died for all of us.